In the 15 years that I've served as a hospice chaplain, death has taught me so much about life. It's taught me so much about love. There's several quotes that I wanted to share with you that were powerful for me. First of all, the story about Abraham Maslow, which you might be aware of. Shortly after the famous psychologist Abraham Maslow suffered a near-fatal heart attack, he wrote in a letter this: "The confrontation with death and the reprieve from it makes everything look so precious, so sacred, so beautiful, that I feel more strongly than ever the impulse to love it, to embrace it, and to let myself be overwhelmed by it. My river has never looked so beautiful. Death and its ever-present possibility makes love, passionate love, more possible." And then I heard the great astrophysicist Neil deGrasse Tyson say this: "It is the knowledge that I'm going to die that creates the focus that I bring to being alive. The urgency of accomplishment, the need to express love now, not later." And then in his best-selling book, Michael A. Singer, The Untethered Soul, he writes, "It's truly a great cosmic paradox that one of the best teachers in all of life turns out to be death. No person or situation could ever teach you as much as death has to teach you. Learn to live as though you're facing death at all times, and you'll become bolder and more open. If you live fully, you won't have any last wishes." See, I've come to believe that love calls you to make death your constant companion, because the awareness of death heals old wounds, it refines your purpose, and you lead a fearless and authentic life. Why? Because if I knew I was going to die, I had a doctor look into my face and pronounce that I'm terminal, I'd start waking up a little bit. I'd start smelling the roses a little deeper. I'd start laughing at little babies a whole lot more, because I realize I don't have forever. And yet it's amazing to me how many of us live that way. And yet the cosmic joke is we're all terminal. We all know that. You see, death is the most democratic thing on the face of the earth. It will take everybody. It will take Democrats and Republicans. Libertarians, I don't know, but at least the Democrats and Republicans. And so when we become aware of that, as the Buddhists teach in death meditation, make death your constant companion, it reminds me that today, Richard, today, all I have is right now with you precious people. Our paths have crossed for such a time as this. I look out the window and I see the beauty of the snow and the trees and on the grass. And I challenge myself to look at it like I've never seen it before, because I realize I don't know how long I have. I was just with a gentleman last week, tending his death when he took his last breath at age 50 of stage 4 liver cancer. And there's his 28-year-old son crying his heart out, wondering why his 50-year-old dad had to pass. And I'm thinking about my 28-year-old son, who lives in Seattle now, and those boys are like 2 weeks apart, literally. And every time I always say, why him and not me? Why? And I never hear an answer, but it helps me become even more grateful for the life that I have now. It helps me become more grateful for the gift of breath that I have now, that I often take for granted until on Tuesday, when I visit a hospice patient who's on a ventilator, gasping for every breath. See, there's beauty and there is power in that reminder that death and life are all part of the same coin. I had the joy of serving a dear man I called Coach. He was 95 when he passed. His beloved wife, Ruth, was with him when he passed. She's 92. They were married for 72 years. And he was an old high school basketball coach. And early on, when he was healthy enough, we would have long conversations about Indiana high school basketball. And he asked me what high school I went to. And I said, Lafayette Jeff. And he says, oh, I remember Marion Crawley. And I said, Coach, I was a little kid when Crawley was coach. I barely remember him. And he would tell me story after story. I happened to be visiting him every Friday at 10. Then I chuckled about that. I said, oh, this is my Tuesdays with Maury, Fridays with Coach. And so I got wise. Every time I sat down with Coach and Ruth in their living room, they lived in a little house outside of Coatesville, Indiana, I would ask them questions about the keys to their relationship, to what they enjoyed most about life. And over a period of months, until he finally declined enough where he made his transition, he taught me more about life, about love, real love, and also about caring for others. Do you realize that about a week before he died, when he was having a hard time breathing, it never failed. Every time I was with him, and he did it this time, and it shocked me, he would always say, enough about me. How are you, Richard? And he taught me selflessness. That was the beauty of what his death did for me. And so now I have the joy of every 2 weeks visiting with Ruth under the guise of bereavement. Once again, Ruth is teaching me about love. And I said, Ruth, so has Coach reached out to you lately? We've already talked about those experiences you can have. And she looked at me and said, oh, I don't know if I should share this with you. So I didn't say anything. And she said, well, she said, I was in bed last night, and you know, when Bob was alive, and sometimes the covers would kind of fall off me, he'd always just gently put them up over me. And Richard, this is going to sound crazy, but I woke up in the middle of the night, and I felt him pulling the covers over me, and then kissing me on the cheek. But it was in bed, and I don't know if that's proper in sharing that with you. I had tears rolling down my face. Oh, Ruth, I'm so glad you shared that with me. Keep those stories. You see, death turns out to be the teacher who releases us from fear. It's the teacher that opens our hearts to a more free-flowing love and appreciation for life and for one another. And when we get stuck in self-importance, death steps in. When we get caught in self-pity, death steps in. And when we become complacent and take things for granted, death steps in. Death wakes us up. It is our most reliable teacher and our most constant companion. And blessed be. Thank you very much.